So it's like this.
All right. On episode 281, we're going to be talking about student loan forgiveness and Times article. I think we can get into that, and maybe a little bit of Trump impeachment. I don't know. We'll see what happens. On episode 281, as always, I'm your host, Donald Kendal, and joining us with his monthly visitation rights, we've got Justin Haskins, editorial director here at the Heartland Institute. How are you, good sir? Haven't seen you in a while.
I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay. I'm trying to figure out if this is monthly visitation, who the wife is. I'm having a hard time understanding who I'm married to in this situation. But
Isaac Orr, policy fellow at the Center of the American Experiment. How are you?
I think Justin's appearance is more of a work release situation.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Better analogy. Jim Lakely, VP of the Heartland Institute. What's up?
Hey, hi all. I thought I made it pretty clear to the judge that I didn't want any visitation from Justin.
Right.
And so I'm going to have to go back to court.
Wait,
and fix
so
that.
is this a gay marriage?
No, this is a violation of a restraining order.
Yeah.
Well, luckily this is digital, so he's actually still miles and miles away. So
how does that work?
Yeah,
Not
that's
far
good
enough.
point. That's a good point.
Don't
Especially in this
restraining orders require people to not contact other people too?
They can. You would
See,
know
Justin,
all about them.
I was going to say, Justin would know. Justin would know.
You know, if we were super timely and we had better production value, Justin would have a cat filter on right now.
That would be a huge improvement.
Yeah, I'm not a cat.
Hey, anytime you guys want to replace me with a cat filter, go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, so I was trying to explore topics that we were going to talk about this week, and just something that just kept reoccurring in the news and social media and all of that is just this increased talk about student loan debt forgiveness. And Justin's basically an expert in this. So I was like, all right, Justin, you got to be on. I know that you broke up with us, but we're going to drag you onto this episode kicking and screaming. So there you have it. But before we get into any of that, is anyone paying attention at all to the impeachment stuff? Jim, you're probably, out of us four on here, you're probably the one that would say yes to that.
Is this the impeachment of Jim Lakely from Vice President of the Heartland Institute?
Well, yeah, of course.
That's the only impeachment that I'm aware of. I don't know of any other impeachment movement. Oh, is it Gavin Newsom? Is it getting rid of him? That's not really an impeachment. That's a recall. Right. Is someone else getting impeached?
If I refuse to participate in the impeachment of myself, does it even happen?
That's a good point.
I don't know. No, I mean, I've had it on the background. I had it on the first day, and the whole thing is a farce. It is. There was an article. Let's put it this way: Jim Garrity at the National Review, he puts out his morning jolt, and he put it out this morning, and he made the point that based on what the impeachment managers, which laughably includes Jamie Raskin from Maryland, who himself disputed the Electoral College vote in 2016 for Donald Trump because that election was supposedly stolen by the Russians or something. But but nobody else is allowed to object to anything else. But he's allowed to do that. And of course, another impeachment manager is Eric Swalwell, who is on the Intelligence Committee and had an affair with a Chinese spy. And so it's just taking those two. Allegedly. Yeah, I don't want this removed from YouTube, I guess. But
Eric Swalwell, notable for being a pick of Justin's in the presidential candidate draft, who was the first eliminated in our awesome pool.
Yeah, screw that guy. That guy really screwed me big time. And it was what a loser. If you're just going to get out right away, then don't even get in. Don't even get in. If you're that big of a loser that you can't even last, because what? There were 19 people in, right? Or some stupid thing. He's the first one out. You are such a loser. If you can't even beat out candidates that we can't remember, you are
Kamala
seriously.
Harris.
Well, no. Kamala Harris was also a loser, but there were so many other losers. Can you even remember? Who was the guy from Colorado? Does anyone even remember that guy? Who was that guy?
Mike Bennett.
Mike Bennett.
That wasn't his first name.
Michael Bennett. Yeah. He was a senator from Colorado.
Whatever. That guy lasted longer than Eric Swalwell.
Who is that guy in Florida? Wayne something?
Yeah, Wayne.
Oh,
Messam. Wayne Messam.
Yeah, mess him up.
Wayne mess him up.
Messam lasted longer than Swalwell. Swalwell is a loser.
Marianne Williamson lasted longer than Swalwell.
Yeah, she made it on the debate stage and everything.
And she's an actual lunatic.
Yes.
Well, and let's not forget the Wayne Messam's big story was the fact that he only raised $5 in a fundraising quarter.
Yeah, a guy who only raised $5 beat you out, Swalwell. You're a loser. The only dates you can get are from Chinese spies that are trying to steal your secrets. You're a loser.
Oh, this is infinitely more entertaining to talk about than some fake impeachment thing.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's what we were talking about.
That's right.
I forgot.
Circle back to
who's
that.
sending the link to Swalwell?
Jim will do that.
We should send it to his
Press
congressional
release.
email. Yeah.
Yeah, make sure you dress up like a Chinese woman. I think you have a better chance of getting it.
Oh boy.
Oh my God! See, this is why we bring Justin on. He's just
he's bringing the heat.
Bringing the heat.
How can you guys do all this joking when there's a serious impeachment going on that we have to have? We have to follow through on impeaching a private citizen who's no longer president, so we can remove Trump from the office he's already removed from.
Right.
And to keep him from ever running again. That's really the intent of this, I guess.
Oh my God!
And really, it's kind of the point of this is I guess humiliation. And look, when the Democrats are acting like the conquerors, right? And so it's not enough just to win an election. Can I put quotes around the word "win an election"?
Mm-hmm.
It's not enough to. We
just got kicked off of YouTube.
We just did. It's not enough to have your candidate installed into the White House. You have to humiliate those you defeated. And so if your hero, if your champion is Donald Trump, we're not just going to be satisfied that, that he was not elected president again. We are going to, humiliate him. We're going to call him and all of his supporters, I don't know, I guess white supremacists or insurrectionists and people that are committing domestic terrorists, people that committing sedition. They're doing everything short of putting people's heads on pikes outside, because that would be a little bit over the line, I suppose. But this impeachment is to basically, smash all Trump supporters, cast all 75 million people who voted for him as deplorable, to coin a term, to use a term again that Hillary used. And it's to dishearten. It's to deplorables. There you go. And it's to demoralize all of his supporters so that, you just got beaten and we're going to make sure we're going to keep beating you until you're really, really beaten. Donald Trump did not cite an insurrection. The storming of the Capitol began before his speech was finished. And the quotes, the so-called evidence put forth by the impeachment managers that I've watched a little bit in the background is laughable. Yet here we go. We're going to continue doing this. And no other business is being done, and MSNBC and CNN thinks this is an actual historic news story. It's nothing. It's a joke. It'll be as forgotten as his first BS impeachment was a year ago.
It's totally forgotten. I mean, I use Facebook as just kind of like my anecdotal evidence of just people don't care at all. And just while you were talking, I went on Twitter, and nothing to do with this is trending at all. Just nobody cares. Why? What is this? It's like a mock trial, but nobody's watching.
They need 67 votes to convict the former president of his impeachment charges, which again, he's out of office. It's pointless at this point. They're not going to get 67 votes. So if the point is to make sure that he can never run for office again and never excite non-leftists into supporting him as a candidate, that's going to fail too. This entire thing is a failure, but I think it's made to humiliate anybody and to institutionalize the humiliation of anybody who ever supported him because they're afraid, frankly, of what Trump's candidacy and presidency represented.
Right.
And it was the most populist, president that we've had that in most people's lifetimes. And those people are still out there. And so this is about the people that are still out there and not satisfied with the status quo, let alone the Democrats. These are people not satisfied with the so-called Republican and right status quo. And, the idea is to completely demoralize and crush them and basically, in a way, so marginalize them that they're not considered legitimate no matter how they express themselves politically.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've talked in the past about like what is kind of next for Trump. Is this going to instigate some like more populist wing of the Republican Party and all of that? And yeah, I kind of tend to agree. That's just like, this is to like irrevocably stain that type of new party, in the future. But like all of this is based on Trump's rhetoric, right? That the election was stolen and all of that. That's what he was used to instigate an insurrection, which is just a preposterous thing to say. But this new Time magazine article, which came out like the day we posted our last episode, if we waited like 6 hours to record last time, we could have talked about it a week ago. But Isaac or Justin, did you read this Time magazine article? You know the one I'm talking about.
I read a lot of it. I didn't read all of it.
Yeah, well, it's 7,000 words.
Yeah, I've been meaning to read it, but haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, so I got sent, screenshots of it with certain things highlighted, and I was just like, oh well, like I know the game. These things, these excerpts are just taken out of context or whatever. So I'll wait and I'll read the entire article before I make my judgment. So I read it. Jim, you read it too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, they are pretty flat out with the stuff that they have to say in this article. So again, this is a Time article, Time magazine article. What's the title of it, Andy? You have that pulled up there. The secret history of the shadow campaign that saved the 2020 election. It's just like Orwellian doublespeak already, just like slathered. That title is slathered in it. But it says there was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protests and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between the left-wing activists and business titans. It says, for more than a year, a loosely organized coalition of operatives scrambled to shore up America's institutions as they came under simultaneous attack from a remorseless pandemic and an autocratically inclined president. Their work touched every aspect of the election. They got states to change voting systems and laws and helped secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding. They fended off voter suppression lawsuits, recruited armies of poll workers, and got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. They successfully pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation and use data-driven strategies to fight viral smears. They executed national public awareness campaigns that helped Americans understand how the vote count would unfold over the days and weeks, preventing Trump's conspiracy theories and false claims of victory from ever getting traction. After Election Day, they monitored every pressure point to ensure that Trump could not overturn the results. So it just like continues. It keeps going and going and going. This passage I thought was pretty interesting. It is the story of an unprecedented, creative, and determined campaign whose success also reveals how close the nation came to utter disaster. Every attempt to interfere with the proper outcome of the election was defeated, says Ian Bassin, co-founder of the Protect Democracy, a nonpartisan rule of law advocacy group. But it's massively important for the country to understand that it didn't happen accidentally. The system didn't work magically. Democracy is not self-executing. So it just basically goes through and explains how a bunch of left-wing people, they claim that there's some bipartisanship in there because there's like basically one rhino that's involved in all of this, came together to ensure that the election came to the proper outcome. Like I don't know, Jim. Like, am I too cynical here, or are they just like laying out just like a real conspiracy?
It's laying out a real conspiracy. You should think about this. Imagine if this all had happened. Just reverse everything. Imagine if there was a conspiracy, executed by a cabal of powerful right wing people. Say Roger Ailes at Fox News was still alive. So you have Roger Ailes. You have got the Koch brothers. You have think tanks. You have all these people conspiring to make sure that the election comes to the proper result, and that they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on this effort. This, first of all, it would have been reported before the election. This would have been snuffed out. The reporters, the entire media knew this. They knew this was going on. They didn't report it until after the election because they knew that this would get people upset. And this is, you know, this. It's hard to read that Time magazine article and not think that this election, in at least in some ways, and just flat out say it, was rigged. It was rigged to make sure Donald Trump was never elected. I thought all through 2016, it was the buildup to November 3rd, Election Day, after everything that the left and the media and Democrats had done to damage and remove Donald Trump from office, ever since that awful day for them in November of 2016, after everything they did to get rid of the bad orange man, you got to get him out of the White House. They were talking about impeaching him before he was even sworn in. And they had all these impeachment efforts. I think there were 17 different articles of impeachment, it filed for him before they eventually got around to the BS Ukrainian phone call thing, try to impeach him. They couldn't get him out that way. After everything they have done, all the smears, the slime, they pulled out all the stops. The media, the entire system, pulled out all the stops to get rid of Donald Trump. After doing all of that for 4 years, and I could not make myself believe that they were just going to leave it up to the people, that they were going to let the people decide on their own. And if they pick Trump again, oh, well, we tried. No way. Not after everything they had done. So the Time magazine piece actually validates what I had suspected, which is that they were not just going to leave it up to the people to decide whether or not they were going to keep Donald Trump or get rid of him. They were going to get rid of him because getting rid of Donald Trump was, again, the quote, the only proper outcome for the election. And the idea that, they say, again, the quote here from somebody who was part of this cabal, this conspiracy, the co-founder of Protect Democracy. I love the way the left basically names their organizations completely the opposite of what they are actually about and what their purpose is. He says the system didn't work magically. Democracy is not self-executing. Yes, it is. That is actually what a free republic using democracy as an expression of the people's will is. It is self-executing because it is the expression of the people. And if you think it's not, it's because you don't like the outcome and you have to fix it, which is what they did.
Here's the best. This is the best line from it. That's why the participants want the secret history of 2020 election told, even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream. A well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules of law, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election. They were fortifying it. It's just like I didn't write that. Jim, you didn't write that. That's in this article. It's just absolutely insane.
You can't get more establishment. You can't get more establishment media than Time freaking magazine. And so this is bragging. This is bragging that they did this. They can't help themselves. They had to brag about it, and here it is.
That just sounds like all the Russian elections, or all like the sham elections in third world countries, where they're like, oh well, the results must be accepted.
Right. Oh my God, Justin, are we reading too much into this, or is this really about just like making sure all the votes are counted?
Well, I think it's obviously not that, because they made it very clear that they weren't just going to make sure that people were only given certain kinds of information. They specifically said, because that's the media part of it that they were talking about. Oh, we made sure that people were getting access to the right information, and there was a coordinated effort there. It was also that people had this plan to change the laws. I mean, they specifically talk about changing the laws, which I think is really bizarre. I mean, why would you say you're going to change the laws and then say that the system isn't, how is that not rigging it so that it'll be one way versus another? Why would you need to change the laws in order to do that? I'm having a hard time understanding how that's somehow something that you would brag about. I really don't understand that at all.
Yeah, there's a whole. I mean, like I said, this is maybe I said this before we started recording, but this thing is 7,000 words long. It's like a chapter of a book. It's super long. So there's a lot of interesting information here. But in one part, it says the disinformation defense. It says for decades, campaigns have grappled with everything from anonymous calls claiming elections have been rescheduled to flyers spreading nasty smears about candidates' families. So it's bringing this up to talk about the idea of disinformation being spread on social media, right? And it's like, yeah, of course, if there's social media posts that are saying that, like, oh, the election's usually on Tuesday, but no, come in on Wednesday and vote. Like, that's when the real election's happening. I'm like, sure, crack down on that. But it's basically this false equivalency of that, which is like clearly misinformation. And then Trump's rhetoric that the idea of massive mail-in balloting can't possibly be as secure as everybody going in and voting in person. So it's just like, you know, it's the same thing in these people's minds. And it talks about going this cabal, the self-described cabal, meeting with people like Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey to make sure that this misinformation about, you know, the potential fraud of mail-in balloting doesn't get spread online.
Well, the thing, and that, I think that's a really important point. They see expanding democracy or in reinforcing or fortifying democracy as, let's make sure that as many people as possible can vote without there being any safeguards that the people voting are supposed to be voting. Like, that's their way of fortifying democracy. Like, that's what they mean by that when they're talking about it. And what I find so just bizarre about that is if you're delusional enough to believe that, then that means that you thought that the previously, under all the other elections we had, that democracy wasn't fortified because people had to go in and vote themselves in person, right? And yet, no reasonable person would ever think that a system that requires you to go in and vote in person is less secure than a system that lets people mail ballots in, and in some places collect hundreds of ballots and then hand them in on behalf of other people. And those people who voted never see the ballots again once they hand them over to some person who doesn't even work for the government. I mean, like, how could anybody think that somehow fortifies democracy? Like, it's so completely ludicrous. It's so ludicrous. What they really mean is get rid of Trump. That's what they mean. When they say fortify democracy, they mean get rid of Trump.
Yeah, ensuring the proper outcome. They said
ensuring the proper outcome.
They said it.
But they, and then again, like, they said before that the outcome was rigged because some Russians ran some Facebook ads. It was rigged. But this isn't rigging it? I don't understand. I can't even begin to understand that. So a few, whatever, I mean, even if the Russians spent millions, like, running Facebook ads, how does that equate to all the crap that they're talking about in that article? It's not even remotely close.
Just Mark Zuckerberg and his foundation spent, what was it, Donnie, $300 million.
Yeah.
Working with left-wing activist groups to, quote unquote, protect the vote. Again, can you imagine if the Koch brothers, if it was you know, discovered that the Koch brothers spent $300 million working with right-wing groups to secure our election? People would be going absolutely insane. The media would be, there'd be people with torches outside the Koch brothers headquarters for stealing the election from us. Yet, you know, Mike Podhorzer, the guy who organized this entire cabal, who put together this entire shadow campaign. These are the words used by Time magazine. He is, for 25 years, he was a senior advisor to the president of the AFL-CIO. And every single important left-wing group out there participated in Zoom calls and coordinated this assault on a normal, operating, trustworthy election.
Starting in 2019.
Starting in 2019. It's like, again, this goes back to what I said before. This was going to happen. COVID made it easier for them to do all of this, but this was going to happen anyway, because they had to get the bad orange man out of office, no matter what it took, no matter how much money it takes, and, you know, no matter how much coordination it takes, or secrecy and things doing, you know, and dark money, by the way, that it takes. There's no way to track if the only thing that I can see admitted here is like only $300 million just for Mark Zuckerberg in cash to help make this conspiracy happen. Can you imagine how much more was spent in so-called dark money to affect our election? And again, I thought too of like $100,000 in Facebook ads that supposedly, you know, the Russians spent in the 2016 election. It was on those kinds of reads that guys like Jamie Raskin, an impeachment manager, disputed the electoral college count of the vote in 2016 for Donald Trump. and now we're going to impeach him for not accepting the results of an election and saying so publicly that he thinks it's kind of fishy. I would also remind you, Hillary Clinton told Joe Biden, do not accept defeat under any circumstances. So that would have been fine. But Trump is, is apparently, not only should he be impeached, maybe he should be arrested for doing exactly what Hillary Clinton said. And when you see this Time Magazine piece, it validates what he says. He's allowed to think this because of stuff like this.
I just feel like if I were to just copy and paste certain sections of this article and put it on Twitter, I would get like flagged and probably banned for trying to like invoke conspiracy theories, and like they are admitting to it. But I don't know, this article is already a week old, but like we should like archive it, because this seems like something in the future that they'll want to not have exist on the internet.
This is what kills me about this is that nobody on the left, like, they don't care. It doesn't even
as long as the right outcome comes out, the proper outcome, then the means doesn't matter.
I mean, I go back to, it's still up. Anyone can go read it. Go Google search Hillary Clinton, Ukraine, Politico, I think it was Politico, January 2017. And you will find a long expose published by Politico talking about how the Clinton campaign was working closely with Ukraine operatives to win the election, and how people in Ukraine were afraid now, because Trump won, that might hurt them in the incoming Trump administration. Now, how is that not collusion? The same collusion that we've heard. Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. There it is, right there on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the article. It's the whole article is about how Ukraine was working hand in hand with the Democrats to beat Donald Trump. That was the whole point of that. How is that not collusion? And yet nobody cared. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. No one talked about it. Nobody cared. Didn't matter to anybody. And for 2 years after that, at least, all we ever heard from the media was collusion, 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 collusion. It's the same thing with this. Here's an article. It's right out in the open. We're basically, we did everything we possibly could to rig the system so that we had the best chance of winning and Donald Trump was going to lose. And anyone who says that, points that out, you're right, is going to be treated as though they're a conspiracy theorist or a sore loser or
right.
a crazy person when they're the ones saying it.
Yeah, right. I'm just reading the article you wrote. Like, what are you talking about?
It just doesn't. This is the thing, though, and I really do think conservatives need to some degree, like, get out of this mind. And it's really hard to do. I understand, but of course it's biased. Of course it's unfair. Of course the media coverage isn't accurate. That's the way it's been for a long, long time. That's the way it's always going to be. We've been complaining about it forever. Complaining doesn't fix it. They're never gonna stop being this way. And so what we need to do is figure out, how do we actually solve this problem? How do we fix this problem? I mean, really, what do we do to fix it? Because us pointing out the hypocrisy, that has done nothing. That is literally, we have mountains and mountains of evidence that the media is hypocritical. No, it doesn't matter. Right. They don't. If anything, they've gotten more hypocritical over time, even though the evidence has been piling up against them. We have to figure out some kind of plan. And I'm not even saying I know exactly what it is, but we have to come up with some kind of plan for dealing with that issue, so that people are not controlling that narrative, who we know are just going to lie and be hypocritical. Again, the Vice President of the United States of America is on record saying that she thinks the President of the United States of America sexually assaulted someone. That's
and
not
as a segregationist.
Yeah, that's not a... You can look it up. It's on video of her saying, yeah, I believe this XYZ woman over here when she said she was sexually assaulted by Joe Biden. She's the Vice President of the United States.
To Joe Biden.
And yet, if that had been Donald Trump, like if that same scenario would happen to Donald Trump, there would have been investigations. There would be... It would never hear the end of it. So we have to move beyond this and figure out a way to solve the problem. I don't know how, but we have to.
Well, let's get a highly paid cabal of people to get together on Zoom calls every week, and then we'll write a Time article about it at the end.
Yeah. Well, you know, what just there's one thing about the story that I think is important to note, and that is what part of what this shadow campaign and cabal and conspiracy was trying to do, as Justin just mentioned, was getting election laws changed to make it easier for the Democrats to win. Frankly, to make it easier to commit fraud if that's something you wanted to do to make sure you win an election. But just taking one state, Pennsylvania, you know, the Constitution of Pennsylvania requires any change in election law to be made by the legislature and then signed into law by the governor. The governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Wolf, and the Secretary of State, who I think just recently resigned, decided to change the election laws by fiat. They just were going to declare, because of an emergency, because of COVID, we're changing the election law. We're going to allow all mail-in ballots to come in. They don't have to be postmarked on time. They don't have to be signed. We're not going to check them against registrations. We're just going to count them all up, and we're going to extend the deadline by 5 days. And the legislature, which is controlled by Republicans in Pennsylvania, challenged that unlawful, unconstitutional move by the governor and the Secretary of State, saying to the state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania that this is against the Constitution. The state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania is an elected position, and they are dominated by Democrats. And so the Democrat governor, the Democrat Secretary of State, and then the Democrat Supreme Court validated this unconstitutional changing of the election laws in Pennsylvania, in a very important swing state. You know, it's funny, all of these things that happen, all these challenges, all these changes to election laws, they happened almost all the time, only in the states that Joe Biden had to win to make sure Donald Trump wouldn't lose. That's kind of funny. They didn't make these kind of changes in, say, Missouri or Montana or Iowa. They made them in the states that, you know, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, that sort of thing. And so you wonder why people are in the streets. You know, that you wonder why 100,000, was it either 100,000 or 200,000 people showed up in Washington, D.C. on January 6th to rally with President Trump, is because they see these things happening. And what recourse do they have? They want their voices to be heard because they feel like they're powerless because they have no control over the media and have no influence on the media. They feel powerless because no matter, even if it's unconstitutional, these things go right ahead and they always benefit the left. And if, you know, a small section of that 100 to 200,000 people stormed the Capitol, and everyone there that is trespassed or it committed assault and did all the terrible things there should be fully prosecuted. But the people are in the streets because they feel completely powerless. And then they read something like this in Time magazine and they realize the entire system was rigged against me and rigged against just basic fairness. And so, again, imagine if it was reversed. Imagine if there was a right-wing cabal that decided to change the election laws in Georgia against the Constitution. The media would be going crazy. There'd be impeachment hearings everywhere. Congress would be talking about nothing else. And yet here it was done for a year, more than a year. All of these things were put in motion. Yeah. And we're the only, you know, basically people on the right are the only people talking about it. This is really outrageous. And it's just basically what America is now. And it's damn sad.
Yeah, and surely they'll just change all the rules back. You know, we'll go back to normal elections from here on out, right? I mean, they won't leave this to their benefit continue in the future, so we should all rest easy.
Well, that's something Republican legislatures actually have to get moving on now, and it is you know, reforming and solidifying legit election law in their state. You have to be able to, if you know, we can't go back to mail-in balloting everywhere. And in fact, it's funny, you know, the Saint Anthony Fauci said it was fine. It's fine. Everyone can go vote. It's safe. Yet every state just made them all mail in because, you know, we don't want people dying to exercise their franchise. It's ridiculous.
All right, let's move on to some policy here. So last week we talked about some minimum wage and some kind of basic things. My overarching premise was just like, where are the Republicans kind of standing up to this stuff? And the same theme could be kind of related to this next topic, which is student loan forgiveness. So there's the CNBC article that I was looking at that is titled 10,000, 50,000, what different amounts of student loan forgiveness would mean for borrowers. So it explains how President Joe Biden has said he supports $10,000 in student loan forgiveness, but members of his own party, including Senator Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, are pushing for him to cancel $50,000 per borrower. And not only is he saying that you should cancel $50,000 per borrower, he's saying that you don't even need legislation. You can just do this with a flick of the pen. You don't need Congress. Elizabeth Warren echoed that same thing, saying that student loan forgiveness is the single most effective economic stimulus that is available through executive action. 325 organizations and nonprofits came together and basically calling on Biden to cancel student loan through executive action. And close to 1 million people have signed a change.org petition titled President Biden cancels student loans in your first 100 days. So I've got a number of articles here, one from Heritage, one from Cato, one from Justin Haskins, explaining some of the ins and outs of this policy proposal here. So I'm going to let Justin kind of take it from here. I guess what I don't know, just give us some more context to this. Like, is this going to happen? Like, what are your takes here?
So a couple things. First of all, I think that Joe Biden is actually being wildly irresponsible and reckless for even considering a $50,000 loan cancellation. Why not 60?
Yeah.
Or 80?
100.
Or 100? Or 200? 300? 400? How many hundreds can we count up to? It doesn't really matter. It's all money that doesn't really exist, and we're gonna print it. It's not. So what does it matter? It's so strange that these people, on the one hand, totally disregard any sort of fiscal responsibility at all. And then randomly on some issue like this, you'll get someone like Joe Biden who steps in and is, I don't know, $50,000 per person. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know. It's like, why? You're spending 1.9 trillion or whatever on this stimulus package that you want to put together, this COVID-19 relief thing. They want to spend 1.9 trillion on that. Where do you think that money's coming from? That's also being printed. So first and foremost, I don't even really, it's just so incredibly absurd the way that they apply this. Sometimes they care about spending a little bit, and then other times they don't care about it at all. And it's just, how do they even make these determinations and decisions? It just doesn't even make any sense. It's completely illogical. And if you are going to even consider forgiving 10,000, why not just 100? Why not just 200? Just give everybody free college tuition. Like, why don't we just go that route? So on the surface, there's that. The other thing is that this doesn't actually help anybody. And I think this is really important for people to understand. Giving people $50,000 of student loan forgiveness in a system where the vast majority of people are in income-based repayment plans, which means your payments every month for your federal student loans, because that's all this forgiveness would apply to. It wouldn't apply to anything other than federal student loans anyway. Your payments are based on your income level. It's 10% of your discretionary income. So what that means is if you make, if you have, let's say, $30,000 of discretionary income, you pay $3,000 a year in student loans. Regardless of how much loans you have, you could have $500,000 in student loans. You pay the same amount, whether you have $500,000 or you have $50,000. It doesn't really matter. So the only people who this actually would help are people who have $50,000 or less of student loan debt. And in those cases, they're already making payments. They're able to afford it. And you might say, well, what about all the people who've lost their jobs because of the pandemic? Isn't that what this is all about? Well, if you lost your job because of the pandemic and you have $0 of income, you pay $0 a month in payments. So you're already paying nothing. So it doesn't matter. And it's like, well, what about people who've got $200,000 of debt and they're going to spend the rest of their lives paying it off? No, they're not. Because if they work for the government, after 10 years, they get total loan forgiveness from that. If they work for a nonprofit or the government, they automatically get that loan forgiveness after 10 years. If you wait long enough, 20, 25 years, it all goes away anyway. Everybody gets that. So what is the point of this? What is the point of it? Why are we even talking about it? It doesn't actually help anyone who needs help. Everyone who needs help is already getting it because they don't pay anything. And by the way, no one with a federal student loan is paying anything right now anyway, because Donald Trump delayed all student loan payments all the way through January, and then Joe Biden just renewed that all the way into the fall. So no one's paying anything now anyway.
That's why Trump lost. And he lost fair and square because he was too soft on the student loan crowd.
Yeah, he lost people like Isaac on the student loan.
He did. Like, if there was ever a time I was like, I don't want to vote for that guy.
Come on.
It was during the COVID relief stuff. That
sure.
made me mad. Like, Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
So just before we get off on a total tangent here,
He should have been jacking up the interest rates.
Well, actually, he did want to. He did increase the amount of money that you had to pay each month, or the percentage that you had to pay each month of your discretionary income towards student loans. He actually did increase that. Yeah, no, you're right. COVID changed everything, and Donald Trump became.
That's why you lost, Donald.
Well, I don't think that's why he lost. But the point is this. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. The stuff that they're talking about. They're talking about doing all kinds of other things. They're talking about giving student loan forgiveness, for example, for government workers and people who work for nonprofit, forgiving half of their total debt load, no matter how much it is, after only 5 years of working for the government, not 10. And then you get the other half of forgiveness after working for 10 years. They're talking about they're talking about free college tuition for families that make less than $120,000 a year. They're talking about doing that now at public schools only, which of course would drive private schools out of business if they actually did do that. They're talking about all kinds of absurd giveaways that make absolutely no sense in an environment where everybody only pays what they can afford to pay already. That's already the system. We already have a system where it doesn't matter how much debt you have because the payments are in line with how much money you make. So who are we actually helping with this? It's just, it's totally absurd and ridiculous. And the only reason you would do it, is because you want to give the illusion that you're solving a crisis when you're actually not even really solving the crisis. All you're doing is forcing other people to pay for the student. You're just redistributing the debt, essentially. That's what you're doing. It's not even wealth. It's debt. You're redistributing the debt. Who holds the debt? Is it the student that holds the debt who actually went to college and spent money and racked up this gigantic bill? Is it the student that holds the debt, or is it just everybody in America that holds the debt? Because the reality is it's debt either way. Either you're printing the money and the Fed is printing it and you're just paying for it that way, or the student has the debt for 20 years and then the Fed prints the money and they pay it that way. It's all just a big, gigantic, ridiculous scheme. That's all it is. It's just nothing more than that.
Well, relating or speaking of the debt pause, right? You don't have to pay student loan debt pause, whatever. That was going to expire at the end of January, I think, right? And then my wife, who's got a pretty decent chunk of student loan debt, was like, oh, we're going to have to start making payments starting in February. This is like mid-January. I'm like, don't even worry about it. Like they're going to extend it. And like, it's not like I had my ear to the ground and I was like hearing the rumblings that Joe Biden was going to extend it. I just assumed like that Joe Biden was going to come in first month as president and be like, yep, everyone's got to start paying their loans back. Like I just knew that politically he was going to extend it. I didn't know that he was going to extend it all the way to the end of September. It's like, what's the justification for that?
But this is the point though. It was initially started in March.
Yeah.
Of last year,
right?
In to help people deal with the pandemic,
and it was supposed to be like 3 months or something.
Which again
like that.
Makes no sense because if you lost your job because of the pandemic, your payments is $0 a month, so it makes no sense. But that's why it started, and then they made it. It was going to be a few months. Then it was the end of September. Then it was the end of January. Now it's the end of next September. So when next September comes,
yeah, exactly,
and it's time to turn it back on again, it's like, all right, everybody, you've had 18 months of no bills. It's time to start paying your fair share, kids. Is that going to happen?
No.
Does anybody think that that's going to happen? No freaking way. What's going to happen is it's going to get delayed again because there's some other crisis. And before you know it, it's going to be years before anyone's actually paid anything on their student loan bill. And then who's going to be the sucker that's going to come along and say, all right, guys, it's time to pay your bills. It's been 2.5 years. No one is going to do that because it's going to be like a massive tax increase essentially overnight. That's how it's going to feel to these people. So we are in a de facto free college tuition state right now. That's where we're headed. And he's going to be able to do it without ever passing a law. That's how it's going to work.
Right. Student loan forgiveness is now permanent because even if let's just say Ted Cruz, for argument's sake, is the Republican nominee for president in 2024, he'll be asked, "Are you going to continue the waiver of student loan payments that Joe Biden has kept in here? Have been going on for 4 years?" And if his answer is, "Well, no, it's time to pay up," I mean. So it's the system is settled. It'll be a permanent. It's kind of like the tax that they put on telephones, whatever. Like in 1898, and people are still paying that tax on their telephone bill almost 100 years later. This will be one of those things where we do have de facto free college for everyone because the government that now controls all student loans. This happened during the Obama administration, and it was for this very purpose to eventually get to this point. COVID made it happen faster, but here we are. Free college for everybody.
I mean, that like I looked up on Twitter just student loan forgiveness or student loans or something like that, just to see like what the rumblings on Twitter are about this. And there was a number of posts of people talking about how they paid up on their loans like a couple of $1,000s this year, and my loan's below $10,000 for the first time, and I'm going to try to pay off my loans by the end of January or the end of June or something like that. And I'm just thinking like, why are any of these people paying a dollar towards this? Morons. It's going to be like I think it's inevitable at this point that it's all going to be forgiven. Like I'm one of those people. I hate debt. I pay extra on my mortgage, when I can and stuff like that to pay down the principal, so it's not paying towards interest. So like I'm one of these people that is uncomfortable with even the amount of student loan debt that I have, which compared to a lot of people is not a ton.
How much?
But I am not going to pay a dollar towards it until I absolutely have to, because it's just I just keep feeling that they're going to either just stroke, with a pen stroke, it's just going to be wiped away, or it's just going to be, my payments are going to be delayed forever.
Then why don't you get a refund? Why don't you get a refund on the payments you've already made? You just got screwed, man.
Well, hey,
by being a responsible adult, you got screwed, and so did every other responsible adult.
And this is the thing, right? It's not just it's what really makes it so egregious is that there are all these people who already paid off their student loans in the past. Those people have just been totally screwed by this. If this
how about people that like paid it off just before they all of the payments got delayed. Sure. Like they just finished paying it off.
They're all screwed. People with private student loans, and there were a lot. It used to be very common to get private student loans. I actually have a ton of private student loans still because I was right on the beginning. I started going to college right before Barack Obama, and I had lots of private student loans. And so I'm still paying off a lot of those loans, and I'm not going to get any forgiveness for that. And so those people got screwed for sure, right? What about parents that paid out of their pockets for their kids to go to college? Boy, that was a huge mistake.
Whoops.
Shouldn't have done that. Should have just let those kids rack up that debt, because who cares? It's all going away anyway. There were a lot of people that got totally and completely screwed. And we're not talking about $1,000. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars getting screwed. And this is this compassionate solution. And then you talked before about Jim, I think you said Ted Cruz. Well, Ted Cruz will get asked this question. Let's say Ted Cruz gets asked that question, and let's say Ted Cruz wins. The genius of this whole system is, who's going to make out no matter what happens in the next election? Government workers, nonprofit workers. They're going to make out no matter what, and here's why. Because even though the payments have been delayed, you're not paying anything if you have a federal student loan. If you don't want to, you don't have to pay anything, even though those payments are getting delayed. Every single person who's in an income-based repayment plan who is applying for public student loan forgiveness, like all the government workers are, you work for 10 years and all your loans go away, during this period of the pause, you still get counted as payments, even though you're not making any payments. So if they delay this for, say, 4 years, it's as though you worked for 4 years making payments. It's 4 years towards your 10 years. So you're going to have government workers who are getting loan forgiveness over the next several years without having to make payments for the full 10 years. And it doesn't matter what happens when Ted Cruz comes into office. Those people got 4 years of free payments, as though they had been working and paying their bills for 4 years, when in reality, they actually had not been paying their bills for those 4 years. Those people are going to get forgiveness quicker no matter what happens in the future. So this is just a gigantic rigged system in favor of government workers, especially teachers, by the way. They're the ones that benefit the most from this. Public school teachers, not private, well, private school teachers do too, but public school teachers especially, they get huge benefits already, and then this is another benefit on top of it. All the big bureaucracies in Washington, D.C., the swamp, they all benefit from this, every single one of them. Think about how corrupt this is. The Department of Education is the one that actually creates this rule and manages it. Everyone who works at the Department of Education benefits from this. They also get free tuition. This is the most rigged thing ever devised. Yeah. How is this not everywhere? Like, how are people not more outraged by this? I just don't get it.
In the think tank realm, there's a couple of policy arguments that are made against this. One is talking about the moral hazard to consider, if there's a giant wave of debt cancellation, is that going to send signals to new generations of college students to just rack up debt because, hey, it's probably going to get canceled in the future? So there's that. There's another thing here that this was from some article. To have any appreciable effect, people would need to go out and spend the money they would otherwise use to make their monthly loan payments. So they were talking about this in the context of it being like being justified as a big stimulus bill, right? But it's like the problem is it's not like people are getting a check for $50,000 that they're going to go around and spend, right? It's just paid off $50,000. So theoretically, you wouldn't have monthly payments to make. So it says to have any appreciable effect, people would have to go out and spend that money that they'd otherwise be spending on their loan payments. Would they do so? As Matt Brunig, I think one of Justin's favorite people, of the People's Policy Project, a think tank, points out, student loan holders tend to be on the higher end of the income scale. Higher income people tend not to live hand to mouth. If they got a little extra money every month, they're more likely to save it than spend it. So even the justification of this being like a stimulus, a stimulus thing, like that doesn't even pan out. But I think all of these arguments are kind of null to just the idea of the populace. Why not do it? Like what Republican is going to go out there, like Jim's theoretical Ted Cruz example, who's going to go up and stand up against this in the public? Like
somebody needs to. This is just wrong.
Like Isaac,
spoiled rich kids.
I want you to kind of speak your piece, and then viewers or listeners, just imagine if Isaac Orr was a politician and see if he gets any votes. Go ahead, Isaac.
I hate this stuff because I busted my butt and paid off my loans, and now people are going to get it all taken care of. Like, I'm not going to get a refund. Would I be more open to it if I got a refund? Sure, why not? But this is insanity. This is wrong. This is just giving people who went and got worthless degrees, like English Lit, just like, what were you thinking? Why did you get an English? That's on you, buddy. There's no English Lit factory in Milwaukee, to borrow a phrase from that 70s show. Anyone who agrees with this deserves a Red Foreman foot up your you-know-what.
Yeah, okay.
I think people would vote for me if I said that.
You got my vote, buddy.
Listeners, put a comment.
Like, you know what? He's right. He's
put a comment below this video and tell us if you would vote for Isaac Orr in 2024 with that campaign speech there. Yeah, and obviously, like the bigger kind of macro policy conversation that we could have is just the idea that the $1.7 trillion of outstanding student loan debt held by the government, like this is a problem that's exacerbated by the government's involvement, and how the real policy solution is unwinding that government interference with the student loan industry. That's probably a longer conversation that we have time for in this episode. But my next question to Justin is, like, is this going to happen? Like, we've already said that we think that this kind of delay in making student loan payments is probably going to go on indefinitely. But, like, is there going to be an executive order from Biden, in the next 87 days or whatever, to actually wipe away huge portions of student loan debt?
Yes. I say yes. I vote yes. It won't be $50,000 because he's got to compromise. He's not a far left-wing liberal. He's a moderate. So he's only going to arbitrarily, using executive orders, forgive hundreds of billions of dollars of debt, but not all of it. Not all 50,000, because he's, Scranton Joe, and everyone in Scranton, they all agree with Joe. So
we only believe in a few flavors of ice cream, not all the crazy Ben and Jerry's stuff.
Yeah, right. You think he's gonna go for the
chocolate,
50 grand,
vanilla, and strawberry?
Yeah, save your cherry Garcia for.
Yeah, do you think Corn Pop is? What do you think Corn Pop would want? Like, what do you think he would think is the right choice? I think that Joe Biden is going to forgive, let's say, $20,000 or something like that. He'll put some kind of thing on it, and he might tie some income to it too. So he might say something like, "Oh, if you make less than 150,000, then you get 20,000, and then we'll taper it off." Because again, it's all a PR stunt. Again, none of it makes any sense. The lowest income people, this is what's so absurd about it. The lower income you are, the less this actually does anything for you. Because you're not paying anything or almost nothing. So it doesn't actually help low-income people. It doesn't at all. The only people it helps are people who make lots of money and haven't paid and have about $50,000 or a little more than that, still left to pay, because their bills go away entirely and they get charged based on their income. So it helps people who make lots of money, but they don't need any help. So what's the point? Again, it's just such a stupid thing. It is so stupid. It is so incredibly stupid and reckless and irresponsible. All it is a redistribution of debt. And the only reason why they're doing it is as a big PR stunt to make it seem like young people are benefiting from this, when in reality, young people are not benefiting from it because they don't make any money, many of them. And the ones who do make a lot of money, it's not really going to change their lives that much anyway. It's a scam. It's a huge scam.
Jim, same question to you. What is the likelihood of this happening? And I guess in addition to that question, do you think that it would be more likely to be executive order or some act of Congress?
Oh, it's not going to be an act of Congress. There's no doubt about that. It will. It's 100% it will happen, and it'll be $50,000. Why not? I'll bet on that. But I think the most impressive thing about this is that today's universities, especially in the liberal arts, basically teaches young people to hate their country. A lot of the really toxic thinking in our society today comes out of the universities. And so now we are basically, the American people are being made, I am being made to pay to indoctrinate kids to hate their country and to hate me, frankly, because of my viewpoints on things. That's talk about adding insult to injury. That's really the thing that burns me up about this, is that, if they actually produced useful people for society, if everybody who came out was like an engineer who's going to build a rocket to go to Mars, all right, maybe I can get behind for giving those kind of loans. But, to put out these, gender studies and English lit majors to lecture me and to join media and to lecture me about how terrible America is and how I need to be deprogrammed because I voted the wrong way. That's what we're subsidizing here. Yeah, that doesn't depress you. I mean, I don't know. It depresses you.
No, that's a very good point. Isaac, you are passionate about this. I'm going to give you the final word.
I just want to say amen, Jim. Like, this isn't so much a bailout for the kids as much as like they're going to benefit from it, right? But it is a bailout of higher education because it's just become like even more worthless than when I went to school. And like having graduated and realizing that nobody gets a required class in financial literacy. And like, that's how they keep people coming to college for humanities classes. Because they really just want there to be so much crippling debt that nobody's like, whoa, college, I don't know about that. Like, I don't need 4 classes on Oscar Wilde to, have a productive life. To learn how to sheetrock people.
Yeah, seriously. All right.
Oh, we're going to need to send, I will say this, all those poor people who lost their jobs with the Keystone XL pipeline, they might have to go back to college.
That's right.
They can just
go for the doctorate.
Code. Yeah, they can go learn to code in college.
Yeah, but you could do that at a community college.
Yeah, no, just go for the full-on doctorate.
That'll be free under Joe Biden's plan. So
there you go.
I guess that's what they can look forward to now that they've lost their jobs. They can go to community college, work for a couple of years learning how to code, and then come out and hopefully you'll be able to get a job working as a low to medium paid person at some solar panel factory in Nevada or something.
As if that wouldn't flood the market for coders and drive the wages down to like $15 an hour, right? Like if everybody was able to code, then like there wouldn't really be a big need for coders. Like I love it. It's great.
Like I said last week, and this will probably be a reoccurring statement by me, but we are well beyond the realm of economic reality at this point. It's just like, what's a couple $1 trillion? Who cares? Throw it.
Fantasyland.
It's not going to have any real economic impact and stimulus or anything like that. It's gonna help people that don't need the help. Whatever, who cares? Just throw it out there. Just hit it's not even the printing presses that are running hot anymore. You just hit the enter button a couple more times. So who cares? So that's
probably engineered a printing press to hit the 0 enter button.
That's a good point. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the In the Tank podcast. If you like our show, please subscribe, write a review for us on iTunes. It'd be greatly appreciated. You can find our podcast on pretty much everything nowadays, including Stitcher, Google Play, YouTube, even Spotify. If you would like, you can follow our show on. Don't follow us on Twitter. Just send us comments, suggestions, questions. Gmail, inthetankpodcast@gmail.com. Justin, where can the fine people find you?
Well, for now, they can find me at Justin T. Haskins on Twitter and Facebook until they throw me off after this video because you guys talked about election fraud over and over and over again, and so now we're totally screwed. Yep. So for right now, you can find me there, and maybe when Parler comes back, also at Justin T. Haskins on Parler, if someday that actually happens. Otherwise, you're going to have to send a mail to the Heartland Institute. You can just Google it, and you can find our address, and you can send us mail, because that's apparently the only way you'll be able to reach out to us.
Thank God they saved the post office.
Yeah, thank God.
Jim Lakely, where can the fine people find you?
At J Lakely on Twitter, at Heartland Inst on Twitter. Always visit heartland.org. And we are now starting to upload these videos to Rumble and BitChute. So watch for Heartland Institute there.
Oh my goodness. Isaac Orr, same question.
What did you say? BitChute?
BitChute.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Legitimate mistake. Isaac Orr at the fracking guy.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in. We will talk to you next week.